My name is Peter Hosley, and I'm your host tonight. I want to introduce my guests tonight. We have three speakers. In Jerusalem, Dr. Chagai Agmon-Sneer. He's the director of the Jerusalem Intercultural Center. Good evening, Chagai.
Good evening, thank you.
Here in Zurich, I'm welcoming Dr. Ruth Bloch-Riemer. She's a member of the board of the Jerusalem Foundation in Switzerland. She's working with philanthropic institutions and donors. And in Jerusalem is Shai Doron, president of the Jerusalem Foundation. Hello, Shai.
Good evening to everyone from Jerusalem.
So let's just dive in. Chagai, before we talk about how you dealt with the crisis, I think we have to speak about the ongoing crisis. Here in Zurich, life is pretty much back to normal, but the number of cases, COVID-19 cases, they're going up daily. How is the situation, the current situation in Jerusalem? I think you had a pretty dramatic number today.
Yes, indeed. I think that practically what we understand is that we are beginning a second wave now of COVID-19. Maybe I will just for a second, if you don't mind, show you the statistics. It will take me a second. Well, it's in Hebrew, I apologize, but it's not very hard to understand. This is April, this is May. You can see it, right? This is June, and this is July. You can see the previous wave that we had in Jerusalem, and we actually behaved very well and got out of it to almost zero afterwards. And before I go to what happened next, let's understand the colors. The greenish thing are Palestinians, Arabs of East Jerusalem. As you can see, there were not many of them infected in the first wave. Most of those who were infected are the purple, which is the ultra-Orthodox community of East Jerusalem, and the rest are the Jews who are non-ultra-Orthodox in Jerusalem. So the main wave was ultra-Orthodox. We had also others, but that was the main thing. And because we actually worked very hard on it, and we'll talk about it later, we got better. And now we got one school, one Jewish non-ultra-Orthodox school that got many cases in the beginning of June. And after that, it got worse and worse. And in fact, we are here, so just the beginning of the wave, we can see that it goes up. And this time we can see more Arabs, Palestinians who are getting into the equation of COVID. And it's something that we need to talk about right now. So this is, if you refer to where we are now in emergency mode.
So you're saying that you're back into an emergency situation. I mean, apparently today over 1,000 cases were reported in Israel. Shai, do you think it is necessary for the country to go back to a lockdown of the economy? I mean, will this actually happening?
The risk now is losing control. It's so close to losing control, and this is really bad news. It's the economy, and it's the social crisis, maybe like other all over the world, but this is the main issue right now. It's going to be, Israelis and Jerusalemites, it's going to be very hard to convince them to go back to a real lockdown as it was March and April. But the numbers are really disturbing. If we're speaking about 1,000 cases in a day in Israel, it's disturbing numbers.
Shai, in Zurich, these numbers are going up as well, not as dramatically as in Jerusalem. But do you know in Israel where these infections are actually happening? Are they happening in nightclubs as well, or are they happening in schools? Like, are you aware where they are happening?
This is the main problem, that they lost the footprint where the virus is and where people got infected. The high numbers of almost 1,000 people a day will not able right now to really try to find out and to do the research where and what are the centers of infection.
Ruth, I want to bring you into the conversation. The Swiss government today has said that certain countries where Swiss people travel to, if they come back, they have to go into quarantine for 10 days. Israel is also one of these countries. What sort of does this say about the work of the foundation, that if you actually wanted to travel to Jerusalem and wanted to come back to Switzerland, you actually had to be quarantined? Does this create problems for the foundation?
Well, as Shai already said, for Jerusalem, we are looking at a similar situation on a bit the lower flame in Switzerland. I think also in Switzerland, we try to maintain control insofar as this is possible, and the quarantine is one of the possibilities that have been implemented now. Obviously, refrains us from traveling to Jerusalem and back. It's quite clear that also for some time, even after such a quarantine rule will be lifted, that in the future we will more rely on digital communication and travel will be a bit more difficult.
Mm-hmm. Let's look back. In early April, Israel started its lockdown. Foreigners could not travel to Israel anymore. Israelis who returned home had to be quarantined for 14 days. Haggai, how has Corona, or COVID-19 as we call the disease now, how has it changed and impacted in Jerusalem if you look back the last couple of months?
I think that it created a very interesting, I would say, atmosphere in the city. You know, we isolated ourselves. You know, the different sectors looked at each other to see who behaves better. And what is very interesting is that we all assume that the worst case will be in East Jerusalem. You see, those Arabs, Palestinians are hugging each other all the time. And they don't care about the law at all. And you would assume that there will be those who, and they live in dense communities. So the assumption was that they are going to be the worst case that we have. Surprisingly, it was the other way around. Those Arabs in East Jerusalem took themselves into a lockdown that was even worse than what the government asked them to do. They closed the education system. By the way, this is one point that you asked about it, and Shai referred to it, is that if we try to understand why it happens again, it cannot be the education system in East Jerusalem, because in March, the education system in East Jerusalem closed down. And when Israel decided to open it again, the parents didn't send the kids. Practically from March until now, kids in East Jerusalem are not going to school. So it doesn't come from school, definitely. So, and they did all the things around the clock, and we had Ramadan, we had Eid al-Fitr, which are holidays that are full of eating, celebrities, you know, going around celebration, and and also Al-Aqsa, which is a huge mosque in the middle of Jerusalem, usually with 30 or 40,000 people hugging each other at the same time, and those Muslims decided to lock themselves down. They did excellent work, and that was very impressive. In the beginning, when we are talking about the ultra-Orthodox community, people were very disappointed all around Israel because the ultra-Orthodox didn't agree to take the measure they were supposed to do. And people were angry about them. Practically, we need to understand the logic, or at least the emotions. The meaning for the ultra-Orthodox was not to do anything that they used to do, not to pray a few times every day together, not to go to a mikveh, which is actually a bath full of corona, and not to do many things that they are used to do. And the regulation says to them, practically, you're supposed to stop being ultra-Orthodox. So they didn't do it for the next week or two, and the result was very bad. But then also the ultra-Orthodox community took itself very seriously. It took a while for all the other communities to see it, but most of them, most of the time behaved very well. There were always in the press stories about some extremists who did celebrate that was not supposed to happen, but it was there. So this was maybe two interesting communities we can talk about. A third community I would like to refer to are the asylum seekers in Jerusalem. It's a small community, only 2,000 people, that came from Eritrea. and they are in Israel looking to, they're supposed to be refugees, but Israel doesn't recognize them as refugees, so they're called asylum seekers. And most of them found themselves without jobs very early in this situation and without any understanding of the situation, and they had to get a lot of work around them. And what actually happened is that we and our organization, with the help of the Jerusalem Foundation, got into those communities hand by hand and tried to help them find solutions, fill the forms, see how to do it, walking through the gaps of language, culture, etc., to make sure they all survive the situation. A lot of it is thanks to the Jerusalem Foundation, and with the help of the municipality too, we managed to contain the situation in the city very well.
Haggai said that with the help of the Jerusalem Foundation, you helped to manage the situation. I wanted to ask Shai, I mean, the challenge was to act very fast and act very precisely. What did the Jerusalem Foundation actually do to tackle that crisis, Shai? Can you be a bit specific about the work you did to address all the difficult situations that came along?
We needed to adjust ourselves immediately, and the challenge was now. And we shouldn't wait, and we needed to act in an efficient way, fast, and try to answer the immediate needs, and in this case, the basic needs of the population, the diverse population of Jerusalem. And I would like to address, in continuation to Haggai, what he told you. And don't forget that Jerusalem entered the situation as the poorest city and the most diverse city in Israel. This was a huge challenge. Lot of vulnerable population in the city, but, and this is the big but, we knew that it could be even an opportunity. We built along the years the network of the civil society organization, community centers, organizations like the JICC, like Haggai is leading, and we knew that we have the base, and we used immediately those networking of volunteers to try to give the answer, the immediate answer for the needs of the most vulnerable population. And I'm speaking about elderly people, I'm speaking about kids that are at risk, I'm speaking about kids and adults that have special needs. We are speaking about the Palestinians that Haggai mentioned, that the gap and the barrier for language, just to know what happened. They didn't have access for information, so we needed to invest some resources just to give access to information to those Palestinians that live in Jerusalem, part of the economy, but because of the gap of language or the barrier of language, needed much more help and attention just to understand and to get the rights. So the challenge was huge, wide. We started to work, and I must give the compliment to the city and the mayor. We work very well in coordination with the mayor and the city, the senior city professional staff. And we did, again, fast. This was very important, do it fast, immediate, full of transparency, and in an efficient way.
Mm-hmm. Shai, I want to ask you a specific question, something you told me about, and it actually struck me. I mean, there are Holocaust survivors living in Jerusalem, and they're elderly people, and they're especially vulnerable against COVID-19. What was done to protect them?
So one that really kept all the regulation, kept the lockdown. But it wasn't only about Holocaust survivors to give them the medicines or to give them the food that they needed, because the loneliness, the feel of threat, the fear that they suffered, being lonely people in the world, and in some cases without access to what we are doing now. For us, it's go without saying that we are doing Zoom, or we can do a WhatsApp call, video WhatsApp call. Try to imagine a lonely Holocaust survivor living in his apartment, even if physically is okay, the fear, the stress, the fact that he's alone, force us to come with a new initiatives to bring them not only the food and the medical help or medicines, to be with them, to give them the feeling from remote that we are with them. and to teach them while they are in lockdown how to use tablets or smartphones to use Zoom or to be in touch with different call centers that we open, or with even the families.
Chagai, you said that you worked a lot in East Jerusalem as well. I mean, was your work welcome by the Palestinian people in East Jerusalem? And how did this work go? I mean, you talked a little bit about language barriers. I mean, what did you do to overcome these language barriers?
Maybe I'll begin with a story from the last 2 days, and then I'll generalize and answer your question.
Yes, please.
And in 2 days, I get a call from one of the Palestinian organizations that work in Jerusalem that said, you know, we have a problem. There are people who are isolated at home, there are families who are isolated at home, and they're not supposed to get out of home, and they need to do something with their garbage, you know, they need to take it out from the house, you know, somehow, and cannot get out to put it out, and the neighbors don't agree to get in because they're in isolation, they don't want to get in. And they said, you know, we as NGOs in East Jerusalem, I'll talk in a minute about the civil society, are trying to solve it. We get it with volunteers who get in to do stuff, but you know what? It's not our work. You know, Jerusalem municipality, they need to find a solution. And I said, you know what? I need to check it. And I made just a few phone calls because we have very good connection in the municipality. And municipality said, I'm not sure if you understand, if the guys would have called the hotline of the municipality, someone would have come from the sanitation department to do it. There's a protocol for that. I said, it's great, but nobody knows about it. So I said, okay, let's try. We asked 2 families to call the municipality to this hotline. Surprisingly, an hour later, the sanitation department came and cleaned it. And then I said to the municipality, do you mind telling it to the people? Because what am I going to do? And the mayor of Jerusalem has a Facebook page in Arabic. So he made a post today in Arabic on his Facebook page saying, guys, if you're in isolation and you need to get your garbage out, or if you need food or any other help, like medicine, etc., call us at municipality, we are going to come and do it. And that was very important because the assumption in the beginning of the crisis was that nobody cares about those Arabs Palestinians. What actually happened is that the civil society on East Jerusalem, which is a civil society that we helped to flourish in all those years, with the help of the Jerusalem Foundation, there's some excellent programs that we do together to make it happen. They actually said, okay, we need to do it ourselves. And they started to solve problems by themselves. It took them a while to understand that they are not being ignored by the government, but we had to work, and it's a good question that you asked, we had to go through the language barrier and the cultural barrier. Because first of all, you need to translate all the stuff into Arabic, and after a short while, all the information in Jerusalem was translated into Arabic in real time, very fast. There was a huge group of activists in Jerusalem that we made a WhatsApp group of all of them that were transferring the information all the time in Arabic, and we all the time pumped inside more and more information. And it had to be culturally oriented because we had Ramadan, we had Eid al-Fitr, which was very specific. We had events that are related to what we do over there, and we had to think how to make it happen. As just one example of the propaganda, I can show you the caricature, but I'll just say it aloud. There was a caricature in East Jerusalem in which you see 2 kids on Thursday afternoon telling their mother, you know, we want to visit our grandparents because we love them. And the mother tells them, you know, if you love them, don't visit them. That was a very important. Stay at home was something that was talked all about in East Jerusalem. On Facebook, this term, stay at home, don't do the thing. And it was very hard because it's a family-oriented society. And it was something that we had to do with our programs together with the Jerusalem Foundation, also with the municipality that walked into it. And it was a very good question that you asked because we need to remember that East Jerusalem always in a feeling that they don't have trust in the Israeli government. For many of them, it's called the occupation. And now they found that this occupation takes care of them. So that was something that created trust.
Let me ask you something, Chagai. I mean, this trust issue, do you think that you could actually implement more trust, or that the people in East Jerusalem trust the Israeli government more now because of your work and because of how the whole situation played out?
I'm going to say some of few good words about the mayor of Jerusalem. And I'm very cautious about it because our organization never favors one mayor over the other. So, but I think that professional thing is very relevant here. I think that the attitude of the new mayor in the last year is saying, you know, I'm not into politics, not only in Jerusalem, in general. He says, I need to provide services. I want to create trust with the residents that live in the city. Occupation, no occupation, ultra-Orthodox, non-ultra-Orthodox, asylum seekers supposed to be out, supposed to be in. I don't care about it. People need to get services. And he gets trust about it, even personally. And there were a few cases in the situation that he went to East Jerusalem personally to provide food with the welfare and the Jerusalem Foundation together, and he was there to do it. I want to emphasize that it doesn't take the politics aside. The conflict, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, he's talking about the occupation, etc., it's still there. But the saying is that in time of crisis, and maybe not also in time of crisis, when we are talking about services, we need to take it out and to talk about the well-being of the people themselves. And in this thing, we managed to do it very well.
Bruce, we just heard about the work from the Jerusalem Foundation, Hagai's work. When you heard and still hearing about the problems in Jerusalem, how did the Swiss branch of the Jerusalem Foundation react to that?
Well, on the level of the board, obviously, we immediately turned into also a digital mode to continue to collaborate, to support Jerusalem as far as we can in this situation. And in our discussions, we noticed that actually the developments that we also see in Switzerland are helping people here also to better understand the challenges that the population of Jerusalem is facing. And I think all of this just accelerated our efforts to support as much as possible also from remote.
How did the information flow work? I mean, were you pretty much aware what was going on in Jerusalem all the time?
Yes, we got regular updates and the information flow went really smoothly. Also, our latest board meeting was on Zoom, so this is nowadays for us in our society not so much of a problem anymore, but it made us aware that this is still a set of tools that we use on a daily basis. As Shai said, for us this is normal. Probably it is a bit more difficult for elderly people or people that are a bit further away from digital skills and education anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to add another perspective. Take, for example, we spoke about the Palestinians, but take, for example, the ultra-Orthodox community. You were speaking about remote learning. Okay, it was the tool that was very clear that all the kids started to not to go to school, but remote learning. Don't forget that among most of the ultra-Orthodox communities in Jerusalem, the computers, tablets, or smartphones are not part of their life, their routine. It's not kosher. And suddenly they understood, and this is the big change. It is a culture change. And we need to understand that this is a culture change. And by it's not a joke, it's really a situation that some of the tablets or the computers, laptops, or even smartphones that we supply to help the Orthodox community was with a special filter to avoid the kids to go into, sites that you don't want to allow Orthodox families to be exposed to. And you must understand it. So because we are speaking very easily about remote learning.
Shai, you introduced yourself to myself as a storyteller, and I think, and you just said that that you used money to buy laptops. I think you got some Swiss money as well for that, or very early on in the crisis. How did that come along?
I'm telling you that this is Irene, our German-speaking country's desk in the Children Foundation. This is with God's help. It's so impressive that, you know, the first money that we could distribute for the immediate needs came from Switzerland, from all places. What was good about that this pulled the others from all over the world, from the US, from Canada, from Great Britain, you know, to follow the Swiss money. We started to tell the story of the immediate needs, and others joined from all over the world. We crossed the $2.5 million for different needs of the city during the crisis. That the initiative, the fact that we could give answers to the immediate needs, started from Zurich and from Switzerland.
And we're listening to some music. It's the Hasadna String Orchestra, and we're hearing Featuring Light in Corona Times. All feel about this, but for me, these musicians playing together on Zoom, it's actually the one Zoom meetings that are most enjoyable and tolerable. It always touches me wherever they play music together. Shai?
Peter, if you allow me just to say a few words about Asylum, it's another project of the Children Foundation, but this is about really being excellent. Those are the most gifted kids in music, and among them, there are Jews and Arabs, secular and Orthodox, getting together. So it's not only about creative culture, it's about leadership, and it's about communal strengths. Together, they are working for music, and it's great. And you know, even in the worst day of lockdown, one of the days that was very important, and we missed it this year, was the Independence Day. And some of those kids are living in the same neighborhood of Jerusalem, and they didn't want the Independence Day to go without kind of event. So according to the regulation, they started to prepare themselves in advance, 10 days in advance, to do like an open concert, like we saw all over the world in the balconies, on the street, not more than 100-meter distance from their houses, but they live together. Part of the kids are living together. So they organize themselves with a conductor. And in the evening of Independence Day, that it's very important day for all the Israelis, they came down with the parents and with the community around, sit in the middle of the street, on the dark, with no lights, with no amplifiers, and they started to play some Israeli music. When they finished and played the Hatikva, the Israeli anthem, I'm telling you, I saw the video because it's far away from my house, so I couldn't attend the place. But when I saw the tears in the eyes of the parents and the kids that are playing the music, when they came with the, you know, the initiative, the creative initiative to celebrate Independence Day under the regulation, it was so touchy. Mm-hmm. The excitement around that was much more. This is the power of Jerusalem. This is the power of being excellent like Hasadna, and the power of the kids that are the future leaders of the city of Jerusalem. This was amazing.
Churchill supposedly said once, one should never waste a crisis or a good crisis. And we are going through a major crisis. And let's talk about what Jerusalem can actually learn from this crisis, or how Jerusalem can use this crisis. And I want to start with Ruth. From the outside, looking at Jerusalem, what do you think can Jerusalem learn or even benefit from this crisis?
I think this crisis has shown how important it is to have strong and reliable social networks in order to support people where they need it, and also amongst the society members to interact, be it by helping out on day-to-day routine stuff they cannot do during such a crisis, or also by, for example, phone calls, or just being there for each other in a digital meeting. So this is something that has really proven to have been built up in the past and will continue to work out and even improve, I guess, in Jerusalem.
You want to take that, Chagai, how Jerusalem might be able to use this crisis?
I'm going to continue this point and just rephrase it in a different way. I think that the crisis have shown and still shows that Jerusalem has an excellent civil society and activists all around the city. And I'm talking about all around the city, you know, where we see them flourishing in East Jerusalem, the Arabs and Palestinian sector. We see it in the ultra-Orthodox community. We see it in the non-ultra-Orthodox, wherever they are, the immigrants that come to Israel, even the asylum seekers, you can see the activists who are doing excellent work, and it's sustainable. They know to do excellent things, they're doing it all the time. And what we see, and it's something that I talk about for a few years, I'm so happy to see how it works now. What you need to do is not to activate them, because they're active, they're there. What you need to do is to help them. The metaphor that we use in recent years about how to work with activism is the metaphor of a doula. Doula, I'm not sure if all of you know the concept. Compare the medical doctor that comes to help a woman to have birth. A medical doctor sees a problem, he needs to take care of this woman that has a baby inside her and try to solve the problem. A doula doesn't do it. Doula is not a medical person. She comes into the room and asks the mother, do you want some song to hear? Do you want some music? Do you want some good, that can I take some waste out of your head or to do anything? Anything that I can help you to make it happen? What will make you work the best? And in many senses, what we need to do is a doula. And it's very interesting because this is where the Jerusalem Foundation got in very nicely, because usually foundations need proposals, they need requests, it takes a year to respond. You need to understand that there's the capacity. That's something that doesn't work with activists. And what we've seen this time is that the Jerusalem Foundation was there, by the way, probably also because of the Swiss funding, but others too. They were able to respond to activists who said, you know, we have a problem. And I remember Intisar from East Jerusalem, a Palestinian woman that has a group of 1,000 women all around East Jerusalem, telling me, you know, I want to give some diapers to mothers who need it now. And I said, you know what am I going to do about it? I said, can I call the Jerusalem Foundation and ask them maybe they have some funding for diapers? We'll give all the volunteers, all the system is on we know to do it, but we don't have funding for diapers. I said, okay, call Mira. And Intisar called her, and in 12 hours we got the funding. We could just do it. And these were the examples that have shown us how you can build, how the Jerusalem Foundation became the doula of the activists of Jerusalem in real time. And we've seen it in crisis, and you know what? We need to learn to do it more also without crisis later on. So maybe this is the lesson I get out of it.
Shai, you told me that for once London, New York, and Rio de Janeiro have it worse than Jerusalem always has it, you know. And my question to you, is this having it better than others? Is this sustainable?
This is in our hand now. We should use it as an opportunity. Jerusalem is an inspiring place, inspiring city. Jerusalem can serve as a model to the entire world. If you will excuse me, for example, now we are, I don't know after today, but as we begin our session, but now we are trying to move from the immediate needs into the day after, to go back to support culture, art, civil society in Jerusalem in general. And I can tell you that the inspiration that the people that are working in the city could be a model to the entire world. It's for the creativity and the inspiring situation, it's forever. I know that short term, it's going to be a problem to raise money and to raise traction for supporting Jerusalem, because the situation in London, New York, in some cases is worse than in Jerusalem. But what we learn from this crisis, beside the inspiration, beside the fact that we came with creativity and innovating approach with different things, different challenges, the fact that we have so many good friends all over the world. Our partners are really devoted to Jerusalem. Our partners really care about the city of Jerusalem, even the worst day among the communities in the US, Canada, UK, Europe, all over the Europe. The feeling that people has toward Jerusalem, maybe it's because Jerusalem is so unique and Jerusalem can serve as a model for the future. The economy not going to be good, so I assume that it will slow down the next year or two with a meaningful and significant support to the city of Jerusalem. But the basic thing, the loyalty and the feeling toward Jerusalem, it's strong. It's a basic thing among all our friends from all over the world. It's our responsibility to serve as a model, to live together. It can work and be sustained for long term.
Before, and I want to bring in Chagai, before we open up for questions, very briefly, if you had more money, what would you do?
I think that I said before, what is the main thing that is very important to do is to respond to activists all around Jerusalem who say, we want to do something and we are going to do it. You know, we are volunteers, but we need some help. We need, most of the time it's not a lot of funding, but they need this help to make it happen. And the idea that there will be a foundation that will say, okay, if you need it, we can help you in whatever is required there. I think that is going to happen with us in the second wave. I see there's a question about the second wave. That's something that we need to do now much more, except that we definitely know that there's going to be economical crisis. Many people went out of business. Many employees are out for a leave. Many of them are not going to get back. With the help of the Jerusalem Foundation, we helped many people to fill the forms in Hebrew and Arabic to make sure that they get the funding from the government. So with small funding of the foundation, we managed to create a lot of funding that came from the government.
Okay, and we have some questions already. One is from Inga Rook. She's a correspondent for the Neue Zürcher Zeitung based in Jerusalem, and she's asking, the Palestinian Authority has scaled down relations with Israel. How does this impact the fight against COVID-19 in East Jerusalem? Who wants to take that question?
Formally, there's a conflict between the PA and Israel, the Jerusalem municipality. Practically, they all work together. There's a lot of interaction, a lot of things that are happening over there. And the PA now, because of the issues also in East Jerusalem, decided to lock down themselves with the COVID-19 just in the last day. And that helped a lot the Israeli situation in the East Jerusalem. And it will be vice versa. So there is cooperation, informal. No one will admit to it formally, but it's there.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you again, you called me earlier a storyteller. I can tell you what happened in Abu Tor, Silwan, Ras El Amoud, 3 Palestinian neighborhoods, big neighborhoods. And again, it's worked both ways. And I know what was practical and what was meaningful. In one hand, part of what called the Palestinian leaders called to boycott the help from the city or from the Jerusalem Foundation. In another hand, and this was the majority, all of them came to help to distribute the food parcels. You know, a lot of people, especially in Abu Tor, they call me and say, Shai, ignore what you heard in the news, what you heard in the headlines of TV or radio. We are with you because it's not about politics. It's about human beings that need our help. And thank you for helping us.
A question from another journalist, from Nicoletta Cimino. She said you talked about the beginning of a second wave, or saying that the second wave is already here. What is the biggest challenge for your work when it comes to this second wave? You know, now these numbers are going up again. What is the biggest challenge? Nicoletta Cimino is asking.
Well, for the city of Jerusalem, as Israel in general, the economy is going to be the biggest challenge, to find the balance between the needs, again, to handle the situation from point of view of medical treatment, but especially in a city like Jerusalem, about tourism. There are no tourists at all for the last 4 months. And so many people from East and West Jerusalem are employed by the tourism industry. And so we need to come with creative solutions that will make triple impacts, for example. We will help the kids at risk, we'll help the venues that are suffering from lack of tourists, like the Israel Museum, like the Science Museum, like the zoo, like the aquarium, like even the Cinematheque. And in the third impact going to be by sponsoring some of the transportation needs of those kids or young people to move from a neighborhood to the zoo or to move from the neighborhood to the Science Museum, will help to recover some of the losses of the economy, because we're going to use the local bus companies somehow to try to compensate. So you need to be in quite innovating situation to bring with impacts that have wide impacts, not narrow impacts, wide impacts. So we call it the triple impacts to recover the economy in Jerusalem. So this is the new approach for the second wave.
Haggai, how do you see it in terms of how Jerusalem is dealing with that second wave? What are these big challenges that the city has to deal with in the next couple of weeks or even months if it doesn't go down?
I think that Shai correctly focused on the economy. I will also say that we'll have a problem with, I'm not going to say it in a polite way, with obedience. I'm not sure if it's a good term to use, but there will be some kind of lockdown, and people will be asked to play by some rules. And I think that after getting out of this prison of the first wave, it will be very hard to make people get back in. We have some advantages, the Israelis, we have some disadvantages. We are not good with obeying rules just because they are rules. You know, everybody knows Israelis understand that something that is not easy for us. You know, we challenge the rules.
Mm-hmm. And another question, maybe Ruth can answer that, even though you're not in Jerusalem. Itzhak Schechter is asking whether the Jerusalem Foundation can help to provide food and other items needed by the elderly people who are not able to leave their homes because of the corona crisis.
It's what has happened in Jerusalem already during the first wave, and I assume that with the know-how and experience gathered from the first wave, it will be even more efficient to distribute food, to deliver it to the elderly people who cannot leave their houses. And I think the short ways within the foundation make it even easier to help on a pragmatic and efficient basis, also if there is a second wave.
We have much learned in an evolving process that the needs of elderly people from the Ethiopian community, it's totally different from the Palestinian elderly people or the Orthodox elderly people. And we after learning a little bit, and again, it took some time, but later on we understood that food parcels that we were distributed to Ethiopian elderly people needed to be fit to the culture of the Ethiopian elderly people. For example, special flours that can make the injera, the basic food of the Ethiopian community. You know, one of the most exciting moments of my life during this crisis was an email that we received from a family. It was written in Amharic, the Ethiopian language, after they received a special package of food that we supplied during the lockdown to the elderly from the Ethiopian community. And they wrote to us, "Thank you for thinking about me." It wasn't a general help that we did, you know, because it was a challenge and we were forced to do it. They really got the feelings that we thought about their real needs, and this was beautiful. All of us that involved with Jerusalem Foundation need to feel proud that we are part of Jerusalem Foundation.
I think that was a very beautiful ending to our session, a very beautiful story from Shai. Thanks a lot to Jerusalem, to Shai. Thanks a lot to Jerusalem, to Haggai, and thank you very much to Ruth, who is here in Zurich. And thank you for everyone for joining to this session. We will hear some more music from the Hosanna String Orchestra, and we are hearing Mozart versus the coronavirus. Having a good evening to everyone. Thanks a lot.